and Boo Carter and Jamal McCoy, those are going to be some fun matchups.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you look at the Ohio State-Michigan game. I mean, those guys you mentioned, they got targets, they got catches. I mean, they got 15 catches between the three of their top receivers, but they didn't have the explosive plays. They didn't have the yardage. Jeremiah Smith did have the touchdown, but, like, the receiver group didn't eat up Michigan. I mean, this is probably the best receiver group that Tennessee will face all season long. Very, very talented. Josh Heupel, described him as big and physical, and the boys can run, but it don't matter if the quarterback doesn't have time to throw the football. And the reason why I said the receivers, I think the game will be put on their shoulders to make some plays, and it might be the difference, because I already expect the defensive line to do what they do. Like, I expect them to play like they've played all season long. Like, I expect them to affect the football game.
I do too, but I thought that going into the Georgia game. And that Georgia offensive line was banged up, like this offensive line for Ohio State is. McLaughlin, who Alabama ran out of town last year. Alabama fans could not stand Seth McLaughlin a season ago. Played good football for Ohio State this year. You mentioned it. He's a finalist for the Remington Award, but he's going to be out. Starting left tackle is going to be out. I mean, Georgia was facing those same questions, that Georgia's offensive line, that they were banged up, not playing all that well. Tate Ratledge was receiving a lot of criticism, and then he comes out and he looks like Alan Faneca at guard for 60 minutes, played his best game of the year, played his best game of his career, and just dominated Tennessee's defensive line in a way that we have not seen this year. So it feels very similar to that Georgia matchup, how we previewed it going in, to where Ohio State O-line's been struggling, they're banged up. Tennessee's defensive front better play better than it did in Athens.
No, 100%. 865, 255 Let's take a break. My mic is, I guess, a little fuzzy. I thought I corrected it over the weekend, but I guess not. So take a look at that during the break. 865, 255 is our telephone number. We will take a quick timeout, so don't go anywhere. 865-255-03. Be right back.
Swain Event.
You don't say.
Fueled by Dead End Barbecue.
Good morning, Swain Event family. Jennifer Morris here with Keller Williams Realty. Thank goodness it's football time in Tennessee. When the Vols do well, Knoxville does too. There are so many great reasons to fall in love with East Tennessee, and if you're making a move to the area, I'd love to help you find your new home. Just give me a call at 865-694-5904 or check out my website at nextmovesmokymountains.com. That's nextmovesmokymountains.com, and go Vols.
Fellas, there's a lot of people talking about testosterone, but do your homework and go to a provider that you can trust. I recommend Low T Center. It's where I get my levels checked. At Low T Center, they make it quick and easy. You walk in, take a simple blood test, and you'll get your results back in about 25 minutes. If you've been feeling tired, grumpy, have noticed weight gain, loss of muscle mass, you may have low T levels. Go to lowtcenter.com to book your appointment online. That's lowtcenter.com. Low T Center, reinventing men's healthcare. When you are craving some quality barbecue, there's only one place to go. Dead End Barbecue. Dead End Barbecue has been featured on ESPN's Taste of the Town, the first barbecue restaurant on the SEC Network, CBS Sports, Headline News Tailgate Show, Amazon Prime's The Restaurant Comeback, Food Paradise, and named one of the top 100 barbecue restaurants in America. The search is over. Dead End Barbecue is located on 3621 Sutherland Avenue right here in Knoxville. You can even have it delivered right to your door through Chow Now. Visit their website at deadendbbq.com. Dead End Barbecue. The search is over.
Chevy truck season at Beatty Chevrolet means save on a new 24 Chevy Silverado 1500. Now $10,000 off MSRP. Plus 1.9% APR financing. Plus no payments for 90 days at Beatty Chevrolet in Knoxville.
Just because you can't call in doesn't mean that you have to sit on the sideline. Impact the show with a text box. It's part of the free Swain Event app.
All right, 865-255-03 is our telephone number. Ben McKee, GoVols 247. I'm Jason Swain. I think that sounds a whole lot better. Let's get to the phones. 865-255-03. Good morning.
Good morning, guys.
What's going on, Turkey Man?
Hey, well, real quick, I got several things that was on my mind there. Number one, that the playoff committee situation has got to be changed. The portal stinks, but talking about the portal, I don't want anybody on my team that's going to end up at the concession stand. And my this sold out already, so I think he's going to help you one way or the other move on. I think that the keys of the game is the special teams, because we can't have run backs like was at Vanderbilt and breakdowns there. I think the cold weather will affect the kicking game, and I feel like that we've got to start quick, which we've not done much all year. Because we start quick, then I think it's our big advantage because of what's going on in Ohio State. They got enough problems up there. If we can get on them quick at fans, I think we'll turn on the coaching staff at Ohio State. Yeah, that's my little quick shuttle there, and I knew they'd have to change. And that playoff committee situation got to be done. It's too much. It's not right. I'd rather go back to the computer system and picking them as having a committee. You can't be fair and balanced. Yeah, that's me, guys. I'll talk to you later. Go Vols, and good talk to you.
Hey, thank you, Turkey Man. I mean, I think the right teams are in, but like the seeding is jacked up. Oregon got screwed with their path. I mean, they're the number one team in the country. They got the best record, but yet they got to play Tennessee or Ohio State in the second round. Like, they should have the most favorable path because of what they did in the regular season. That's how it's supposed to be. I mean, I think the seeding is jacked up. I think who is having first round buys, I think that's all jacked up. But like, I don't think Alabama should have been in it. And Alabama fans, like, come on, y'all need to get it together.
Look,
y'all gotta get a grip.
All I know is that somebody who graduated from an Alabama high school in 2013, did 2 years of high school in Alabama, did a couple of years of community college in Huntsville while trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And then I transferred to UT and was at UT for Butch's final year. And then I started doing this media thing, trying to pretend to be a professional at the beginning of the Jeremy Pruitt era, while Alabama was winning national championships, always in the playoffs, this, that, and the other. All I know, Swain, I used to pray for times like this. I used to pray for times like this. That's all I know. God is good.
Man.
I do think, on a serious note,
I thought you was being serious.
I low-key was. The strength of scheduling thing does have to be fixed. I'm not saying that Alabama should have been in there, but there has to be a fix. And I'm not even talking about the whole Alabama debate. I mean, it came into play with seeding and throughout the rankings from week to week. The committee essentially treated all conferences as equal. And that's just not the case, because different teams have different resources. Conferences are going to be better than others. There's not going to be balance in college football like there is the NFL. So how can we properly evaluate resumes correctly? Because Tennessee's schedule is, Indiana is not going 10-1 or whatever they went with Tennessee's schedule, 11-1. They're just not. I don't think Penn State is going 11-1 because, like, okay, even with Alabama, like, don't lose to bad Vanderbilt team, don't lose to bad Oklahoma team. Handle your business like Tennessee did. If Tennessee had not handled its business like you did against Vanderbilt, Tennessee also would not be in the playoffs, because it would have two bad losses to Arkansas and to Vanderbilt. But Tennessee handled its business and it is in the playoffs because it did handle its business, unlike Alabama. Now, I do think there is a fair point, like in terms of the ugly losses for Tennessee, for Alabama, for other teams in the league, like Ole Miss. Like the wear and tear does catch up to you a little bit. Like there's some wear and tear throughout the season that SEC teams have to deal with that other conferences do not. So maybe they do have an ugly loss pop up because of that wear and tear and the grind of the SEC schedule that other conferences do not have to deal with. So I do think that SMU should have been in over Alabama, and Alabama fans have looked ridiculous because of the losses to Oklahoma and Vanderbilt. But just overall, something does have to change with how we evaluate the scheduling and comparing it from conference to conference, because it's not created equal in college sports. This is not the NFL. There's not going to be balance. There's just not. So how do we properly assess the resumes when comparing one conference to the next, because they're not created equal? That's a big question mark to me going into this offseason.
Well, I think the committee had to make a decision on whether or not to put a team like Alabama in or SMU in. And the difference is SMU competed in their conference championship. And so if you put Alabama in, you're basically telling teams it don't matter what you do in the conference championship. And that's just something, that's a bad precedent to set, because SMU could totally boycott the ACC championship and be in. And as a committee, you don't want to deal with that in the future. So you would rather deal with teams having weak strength of schedules than to have a team not want to play in the conference championship game. You have to take the lesser of two evils. The committee was stuck between a rock and a hard place. They really was. But if you're Alabama and you're trying to make a compelling argument of why you should be in, why are you mentioning anything about non-conference schedule? Why are you talking about how moving forward you need to evaluate how you schedule non-conference? How dumb is that? You lost 3 games inside of the conference. You lost 3 games to and 2 of those teams, 66% of those teams were teams that were 6-6, 500 record. You didn't lose to Wisconsin. You didn't play a tough non-conference opponent like Oregon, like Ohio State did. You didn't play a tough non-conference opponent like a Miami or something like that. You lost to Vanderbilt. You lost to Oklahoma. Like, stop. You sound ridiculous. For a program that's won so many championships, that's had so much success, that has the graphic, no excuses on your wall, you're not making a lot of sense. It doesn't make sense at all. Jalen Milroe played terrible against Vanderbilt. He threw a pick 6. He played terrible against Oklahoma. Coaches coach better, develop better, players execute better, and you're in the college football playoff.
Yeah, no, they look silly. They should be. I don't understand why they are just continuing to talk about that when, like you said, they're out of the playoffs because they lost to 2 bad SEC teams, not because they lost. This is not Ohio State being left out of the playoffs because it lost at the last second at Oregon. That's how Alabama fans in Alabama media are trying to make it out to be. People associated with Alabama, because Greg Byrne, the athletic director and whatnot, as if they were left out because they lost a tough non-conference game. That is not the case. Now, I do think they're low-key right. Like, teams should not be scheduling tough non-conference games. They should.
No.
And look, I have brought it up 1,000 times. I can't stand the non-competitive, non-conference cupcake games because I love the product of college football. I want to see good college football games, but it doesn't benefit you whatsoever to go play at Nebraska, go play at Washington. It doesn't benefit you to play Syracuse, NC State, West Virginia, even teams like that. If I am Danny White, I am scheduling UTC, UT Martin, Kennesaw State, although I guess Kennesaw State's a D1 team, but ETSU.
No, they D1. Like they Conference USA. They moved up.
Who did?
Kennesaw State.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Okay.
I should not have. I was scheduled 4 FCS games is what I'm getting at because it does not benefit. They are right that it does not benefit you to go play a tough non-conference game. They just look dumb for continuing to talk about that when you didn't lose to a non-conference game in a non-conference game to keep you out. If anything, you should be talking about this is why the SEC should not expand to 9 games.
Bingo.
Because we are not being rewarded for being the best conference, and the wear and tear of this league, like I was talking about a moment ago, is not being taken into consideration.
Yeah. I'm with you on that one. Yeah. Unless you get this crazy TV contract, then okay, maybe 9 games. But I'm not moving to 9 games, especially after this year. There's no way in heck. And if you are
not
Danny
until
White,
the committee showed that they would reward us for it.
Yeah, like it. And if you're Danny White, if you're gonna schedule a cupcake game and you're gonna pay somebody, make sure you schedule the right one. Now, Kent State, that was boring, but that's how you schedule pay games. You schedule pay games against teams you know you're gonna beat. You don't want to be messing around with Abbey State and Georgia State.
Yeah, that's why I said 4 FCS games. That's why I corrected myself on Kennesaw State because they got to bump up the D1.
Yeah,
don't schedule any D1 teams. Schedule 4 FCS teams every year. That's why Indiana is in the playoffs because they bought out Louisville, I think it was, this year. And look, I think Indiana is better than Louisville, but that's still a competitive game that they avoided and instead scheduled a bunch of FCS games, and they're in the playoffs because of it.
Yeah. We'll get back to the Beatty Chevrolet text box. Had a question about Jalen Smith. I think it was from Fallen Birmingham. Oh, yeah. Wyatt Smith leaving if he's getting playing time. Is he being replaced by the linebacker in the recruiting class or incoming transferred? I figure he will start next year. Most times when you have a player that is playing and he hits the portal, in this case, you can probably chalk it up to him asking for more money and the school being like, no. This happened last year with a lot of dudes in the secondary. These NIL agents, they're killing me, man, because they're pumping up these players, making them think that they can get more money and worth more money. And listen, you are as valuable as what somebody's willing to pay you. But Jalen Smith got opportunity after Keelan Pilley got hurt. He's a first-year player in terms of like really playing. He's made good plays. He's made mistakes. Here was an opportunity for him to show out in a big game, increase his value, whether he stays in Tennessee or not. But now you're not going to play in that game, and it comes across like you quit on your team in the worst possible time ever. Like, this is bad timing. So it's not about playing time.
Also, I do wonder, last game out, Edwin Spillman, like we mentioned earlier, true freshman, barely has played this season due to an injury. He's thrown in there with a club on his hand. Like with Tennessee's season on the line, I can't remember exactly the possession that he was thrown in there, but it was one to where Tennessee's offense went 3 and out or punted the football back, and it was why Vanderbilt was still leading. Tennessee's defense desperately needed a stop, and Edwin Spillman was in the football game with a club, with his hand in a club because of the injury he was coming off of, and he was in there with the season on the line, essentially, and played quite a bit the rest of the game. So I raised my eyebrow at the time. I made a comment out loud about it in the press box next to my coworkers about how wow, Edwin Spillman is in the game here in a critical possession for Tennessee, and then he went on to play a lot throughout the game. So I do wonder with the Jalen Smith situation, I have my eyebrow raised of if that maybe led to him also making that decision. Here I am. I've been playing all year long. This freshman's barely been on the field. He's available to play health wise, and he plays. I can go look at snap counts here in a moment, but he played just as much as me, if not more than me. I wonder if that triggered this as well.
That might be part of it.
A little bit. Well.
That might be part of it. I think what I said is very much part of it as well.
Yeah, and I wasn't trying to disagree. No, I was more so adding on.
Yeah, I know. But you got to roll with the guys that you got, and really all the players got the leverage right now. I mean, I ain't talking about just in Tennessee. I'm talking about every playoff team. Because if you're a player, you can go to your coach right now and go, hey man, I need some more money for next year. And the coaches have to think really long and hard about if they're going to say yes or not. Because if those players hit the portal and they're key players, then that coach ain't winning in the college football playoff. And that coach is the one that's going to be held accountable for that. Now, it looks bad on the player to do that at this time, but understand who got the leverage right now. It's all the players. Multiple receivers got into the portal. So I think common sense would suggest, all right, well, just go to the portal and go get another one. I think you got to be careful if you're Tennessee. And I want to bring this up to you now while I have you, because I know we don't have you for the entire time, but can you name me a receiver that had the same production or better production after transferring since the transfer portal has been official?
Off the top of my head, no.
Because I can't. I'm thinking about Jordan Addison when he went from Pittsburgh to USC. Juice Wells went from South Carolina to Ole Miss. How about Isaiah Bond went to Alabama and then Texas? Those dudes didn't have better years.
He hasn't done much at Texas, right?
They haven't had better years. So you can go to the portal, get a wide receiver, pay him a bunch of money. I haven't seen one receiver in the last 3 or 4 years, since this portal has been a thing, where the receiver had equal amount of production or more production. And I can look at our own team. Chris Brazzell hasn't had more production than last year. So if you're Tennessee, you got to be really careful about going to the portal and overspending, overpaying for a player, and maybe you not get the same production as the old team got. So got to be really, really, really careful.
Evan Stewart has had a nice season at Oregon after transferring from A&M. I'm just going year by year looking at some names here. At a cool feature we have at 24/7 is the transfer rankings, and you can kind of go back year to year and click on the different positions and just a refresher of names is what I'm using it for. But Evan Stewart's had a nice year at Oregon after transferring from A&M. You do have Dominic Lovett 2 years ago from Missouri to Georgia, but he's not been a game-changing receiver.
He hasn't been better.
Georgia.
To me, he hasn't been better.
I don't think so either. If anything, is off the top of my head, I would think that his production has gone down without looking up the stats. A.D. Mitchell, I don't feel like A.D. Mitchell did much at Texas after transferring from Georgia, or did more at Texas than he did at Georgia. Even, but to your point, even I guess the one big one, there is one big one now that I see in 2023, 2 years ago.
What's the big one?
Or this was last season. He's a rookie for the Bills right now, Keon Coleman. He was much better at Florida State than he was at Michigan State.
Okay,
that was a big.
That's the one. That's the one.
But to your point, it's one receiver that
it's hard. It's
We're
hard.
having to really brainstorm, and just with the last two classes, but we're having to really brainstorm here to come up with one.
Yeah. A couple people mentioned players that transferred here, like Javante Payton, Brew McCoy, and Velus Jones. Yeah, I
That's
mean,
true.
I give you that, but I'm talking about high profile receivers in the portal that went to a new school. Did they match the level of production from the old school or exceed it? And I mean, Javante Payton didn't do a lot, period, during his time in college. So anything here at Tennessee would have been more than what he did previously at Mississippi State. I'm talking about guys like Keon Coleman, like Jordan Addison, Juice Wells, Isaiah Bond, like guys like that. A.D. Mitchell, guys like that. Because, oh yeah, here's a good one. Jameis Williams from Ohio State went to Alabama. So that's a good one. That's a good one.
You also had that year Wandale Robinson transfer from Nebraska to Kentucky.
Yeah.
Puka Nakua transferred from Washington to BYU.
Yeah. My point is, you got to be careful. That's my point. You got to be careful with
overplaying down the list.
Yeah, you got to be careful with overpaying because the market for wide receivers is not cheap. It's up there with some of those other. I won't say it's like quarterback or tackle, but it's an important position, and the market is really high. So you better make sure that you get the right guy before you commit to paying a guy multiple six figures, multiple, and I mean over 400,000 or 500,000. You got to be careful. That's all I'm trying to say. Let's see what else is here on the Beatty Chevrolet text box. That's a good one by Brian Hunsucker. Appreciate that. Sterling Shepard, Vandy to Colorado. That's good.
Will Shepard.
Yeah, Sterling Shepard went to OU and plays in the league. Swain, are you taking Concepcion from NC State? I mean, if I can't get anybody else, I would look at it. But I like Dane Key better. I like the kid from Georgia Tech better. That just hit the portal. I think he's a stud.
I think you like the Oklahoma kid, right?
I like Nick Anderson, even though I need him to be healthy, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, me and K. Simon was watching film on him. When he was healthy last year, he's an NFL dude. He's an NFL guy. But
Concepcion's visiting Alabama this weekend, I believe, or in the coming days.
Yeah, and there used to be a time when I was like, oh, my God, Alabama want him, so we must want him. I don't feel that way. I don't feel that way anymore. Nick Saban ain't there. They just had 2 receivers hit the portal.
I tell you
they ain't in the playoffs. I don't want to follow a team that's not in the playoffs.
I tell you the position I've been paying attention to. There's a lot of safeties entering the portal. Tennessee could use the safety.
Yeah, I mean you're gonna lose Will Brooks, and you always got to keep that room stocked full of talent for sure. Yeah, for sure. KJ, is Will Brooks going to keep up with the speed of Ohio State receivers? I can see Ohio State exposing him in the secondary like Georgia did. Can't let it happen. Yeah. I mean, we played a lot of players that had some speed, and Georgia was really the only team that was able to expose us in the secondary like that. So don't let it happen again. Vol in Charlotte says we need to drag Ohio State into a mud fight. I feel like if we can do that, that benefits us. I don't know if a shootout benefits us this season. I don't know if Ohio State can have a shootout. Now, they have the receivers to do it, but they don't have the offensive line and the quarterback play to do it. And so, another thing, let's not get cute here and kick the ball at Caleb Downs on punts, okay? It ain't worth it. Man, what you laughing at, man? Am I lying? It ain't worth it.
Nope.
It ain't worth it.
It is not.
You ain't got nothing to prove. Don't kick it to him. Don't. And Turkey Man did make a really good point about, or maybe that was Tramel, about the cold. And the cold makes the football harder to kick. Not harder like like difficulty wise, but like no, like physically it's harder, and so it's gonna hurt a whole lot more for the kickers and punters. So gotta be really really special there. If you're Ohio State and you've had offensive questions, especially in your last game, you want Caleb Downs to catch as many punts as possible. If you're Tennessee and you got your defense playing well, why would you want Ohio State to score a non-offensive touchdown? That's the last thing you want. And so it's one thing to be prideful about your coverage and how great you are with your special teams unit. And listen, if we are at the 50-yard line and we got a punt, I feel good about us dropping the ball inside their 10-yard line. Jackson Ross has been good. But we at the 30 and our own 30, yo, don't kick the ball to that boy. Do not do it. It's just not worth it. Nelson from Jackson says, do you think bad weather works in our favor with our ability to run the football? What's bad weather? Like crazy snow or like a bunch of rain? Because 30-degree weather, 28-degree weather, 27-degree weather, I mean, I don't look at that as bad weather. It's just cold.
Yeah, and I tweeted about this on Sunday. I'm already tired of the talk about the cold.
Yeah.
It's a storyline, and I would assume Nelson is. I haven't seen a weather forecast. Maybe he's talking about truly bad weather, like you mentioned. But the cold weather, Tennessee's not going to play in the ice age. Tennessee's going to play in weather very similar to the weather that we get here in Knoxville. It is not going to be that big of a difference in terms of temperature.
Saturday 21st, the high is 39, the low is 27. But that can change in a couple days. But
correct. But the thing is,
that ain't bad.
No, you could tell me. Well, you could tell me. Okay, Ben, guess the city that these temperatures are going to be in. High of 39, low of what'd you say?
27.
And you could tell me it was Columbus, and I would believe you. You could tell me it was Knoxville, and I would believe you. So, yes, it is. It is colder throughout the winter in Columbus, but it's not going to be the ice age that Tennessee is going to be playing in. It's going to be very similar weather. It'll be very cold. Don't get it wrong, but it's being treated like some of these southern teams are going so far north. Columbus is not that much further north than Knoxville. It's just a 5-hour drive. The weather's going to be, in terms of the temperature, it's going to be very similar to what we experience throughout the winter. So that is a storyline that is already being overblown. Josh Heupel was asked like 3 questions about the cold during his press conference this past Sunday after the games were announced. And I'm sure he'll continue to be asked about it for some reason, despite it being similar temps to what Tennessee experiences in Knoxville.
All right, Ben. We'll see you at the game, kind of, but not really. But we know you'll be covering the game up there in New York City, man. Enjoy yourself for the rest of the day. I was giving Brian Rice a little crap about being in New York City and how jealous I was when the Lady Vols were up there. Now you are up there, my friend. So enjoy yourself, and we'll see you back here on Thursday.
Thanks, sir.
All right, that's Ben McKee, Go Vols 247. I'm Jason Swain, and if you're looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate, Jennifer Morris, Keller Williams Realty Group is who you need to reach out to. You need to work with. I've seen her in action, working with Ben and his family on 2 separate transactions, 2 separate moves. Very, very helpful. I've seen Jennifer Morris in action with a different couple. I was needing boxes for a move out of my Alabama home, and she set me up with a family that she just helped move into a new home. And we went over, talked Tennessee football. They were just so happy with the work that they were able to have with Jennifer Moore. So I know there's a lot of people thinking about making a move to Knoxville, or if you're already in Knoxville and you're thinking about making a move in a different part of Knoxville, Jennifer Morris, Keller Williams Realty Group is who you need to reach out to. Going back to the Beatty Chevrolet text box, Raleigh Vol, do you expect the Vols to look to add a receiver if they find a fit? I think they should. I don't know if they will. I think if you are Tennessee, and this is something I spoke about a couple weeks ago, about what Josh Heupel may need to do in the offseason and evaluating his offense and deciding what he wants to do moving forward, because you don't want to not play guys like Mike Matthews because you don't have enough room. You want to be able to play multiple receivers. You want to be able to play more than 3 or 4 in a football game, but it's hard to do that if you go up tempo and you're not substituting. And so we saw more receivers be rotated in and out in the last couple of weeks, and that has given Mike Matthews the opportunity to get on the football field. And so if you feel good about who you have coming back and you're going to go more up tempo, maybe that may not be attractive for a receiver. But if you have decided, okay, we're still going to run our offense as far as our alignment, we can go tempo when we need to, but our offense is not solely dependent on tempo. And so that allows us to be able to have more receivers. I think the group is missing a tool in the toolbox. I think they're missing a player that can make guys miss in space. I mean, you're going to lose Brew McCoy. You've already lost 2. I just think we need to add 1 at least. Do we have a receiver that can make dudes miss in space? I don't know outside of Brew. Brew can make some guys miss. He's tough to bring down, but as far as like the shiftiness, the quickness, that's not Brew's game. Squirrel has the shiftiness. He has the quickness, but he doesn't have the strength. He gets tackled too easy. And so you got to get you a mix of a guy that's physical, but a guy that's quick and can run and can make yards after the catch. They got to find that receiver, in my opinion, but I'm not the coach. You briefly mentioned the Lady Vols. I know we're all focused on winning a playoff game, but how sweet is this moment for Tennessee Athletics football team? The playoffs, men's number 1 in the country, basketball, women's ranked coming off big win, baseball defending champ, softball top 10. It's a great time to be a Tennessee fan. Oh, absolutely. Led the show with that. Oh, yeah. Led the show with that. Things are great on Rocky Top. Fabulous. Here on Rocky Top. Why do I think Dante Thornton has another year? Oh, he can have a 5th year. He's only played 4 years. Why can't he have a 5th year? Nelson for Jackson says Dante is done. Why can't he have a 5th year, Nelson? He should go ahead and apply. Get that 5th year. I think it'd be beneficial for him. They're acting like it's Lambeau Field. Yeah, man, I wouldn't go that far with the whole weather. And Josh Heupel is not going to think it's cold anyways. My man's from South Dakota. Josh Heupel be out here wearing shorts, y'all. Like he loves the cold weather. It doesn't bother him one bit. And if you're playing, you're good. It's not going to affect the play. The benches are heated. You're good. The first spring practice for Nico, I remember it was indoors. And I remember seeing Nico. Man, he was so cold. He was so cold. I said to myself, oh, Lord, I don't know if he's going to make it here. We indoors, and Nico's over here shivering. But since then, I didn't see him with sleeves against Vanderbilt. I haven't seen him struggle to play when it's been a little chilly outside. Like seeing Nico without sleeves versus Vanderbilt, boy, that made me feel real good. So I'm not concerned about the weather. I think it's going to be overblown. You have to understand something. Our media members, there's only so much they can ask. start asking the same stuff over and over and over. And let's not pretend like Josh Heupel is Mike Leach or somebody. Like Mike Leach will go off and give you some good stuff, talking about things that has nothing to do with sports. Heupel's not going to do that. So sometimes it's really tough to ask coach questions. So you bring up the weather. But I think it's overblown. I don't think it's going to be a big deal at all. I like our chances. The one thing I don't like is how we have played on the road at night. That is what bothers me the most. That gives me plenty of cause to pause. But like X's and O's matchup, I like it. It's going to be a battle on the outside between Tennessee's DBs versus their wide receivers. In the trenches, Tennessee, I think, has the advantage. At quarterback, I don't really know. I would say Nico has played better as of late. You have to take care of the ball. You have to force turnovers. With Ohio State's offensive line having injuries, how do you think we stack up on the defense side? I think we have the advantage. I think we have the advantage up front. And so, knowing that Tennessee's defensive line, Ben made a really good point, didn't do well against Georgia. But if you're Ohio State and you know you're struggling up front protecting the quarterback, and you know that Tennessee has been really good all year at getting to the quarterback, what are you probably going to do? Quick throws. It's what Georgia did to get into the rhythm. We saw NC State do that. We've seen other teams try to quick game us early in the game. So what does that mean? That means that your linebackers, when they are pursuing, that means when your DBs are in space with a chance to make a one-on-one tackle, you have to make tackles in space. You have to make tackles in space. That's what it means. McCoy, Gibson, Brooks, Thomas, Carter have to make tackles in space. I have a pretty good feeling that Ohio State is not going to allow us to tee off on their quarterback with a bunch of 5-step and 7-step drops. You don't want to give James Pierce the time to get to the quarterback. So anticipate screen passes to the perimeter on first down to try to get ahead of the sticks, to try to be on schedule. Anticipate that, because that's what I'm doing. That's what I anticipate. I anticipate Ohio State to attack our linebackers. You lost Jalen Smith, who can run. You're going to play freshman with one hand. You have two running backs that you've paid a lot of money for. You're going to try to match up those running backs versus our linebackers. I can see it coming. How can you generate explosive plays without dealing with Tennessee's defensive line? Quick throws to the perimeter. Quick throws to your running back versus linebackers. That's how you do it. Cardinal Tate, we know him, right? Had a long versus Michigan of 13 yards, but he had 6 catches. So he had a long of 13 yards, he had 6 catches. What does that tell you? Michigan forced him to throw it quick. Ibuka had 51 yards. 18 yards was the long. He had 4 catches. Jeremiah Smith, their phenomenal freshman, had 5 catches for 35 yards. That's a 7-yard per catch average, but he had a touchdown. His long was 10 yards. What does that tell you? They're not pushing the ball down the football field. They didn't have enough time. This is their stats versus Michigan. They didn't have enough time. If you watch the Oregon-Penn State game, in the red zone, you saw how Penn State matched up their running backs versus one of Oregon's backers. Cleared the middle of the football field, went one-on-one with their running back. Like Penn State got 2 backs that are really good and can catch the ball out of the backfield. Can Judkins catch the ball out of the backfield and be productive? Can Henderson? I would say yes. So I would expect them to try to attack our linebackers. Will Howard, 33 attempts on the day, had 2 interceptions. That's the stat line you want to force Howard to have if you're Tennessee. When you go look at Ohio State's other loss versus Oregon on the road. Now, Will Howard had a better day. He threw for over 300 yards, no interceptions, 2 touchdowns. They put up 31 points. They still lost. Their receivers, Jeremiah Smith had a long of 38 yards. Ibuka had a long of 26 yards. G. Scott, their tight end, he had an explosive play, 25 yards. Judkins had a catch for 21 yards. They had another tight end, had a long for 32 yards. It's the explosive plays that you have to minimize. But I like our chances. I just don't feel good about being on the road at night because we haven't played well enough to win those games on the road at night. So you have to do something that you haven't done a good job of if you want to advance. But let's go do it. You've learned some lessons this season. That's the advantage of playing in the SEC. Like, you learn some really good lessons. So in basketball, one of the most successful programs in the last 2 decades has been Gonzaga. But they don't really play a tough schedule in the regular season. They'll play St. Mary's late. It's a big rivalry. And don't get me wrong, they've beaten really good opponents in the tournament. But it's different when you're going up against it every single week. I think it prepares you. I think it makes you stronger. It's no different than a really hard and strenuous practice. That's harder than the games. The games are supposed to be easy. Now, I'm not saying this game's going to be easy, but I am saying the SEC this season should have prepared our football team for this matchup against Ohio State. Georgia should have been a learning lesson. Arkansas, learning lesson. And even in some of those wins we had, where you didn't score an entire half at home versus Alabama, versus Florida. We've learned so many great lessons that can help us versus Ohio State. Vol from Charlotte, they talk about the weather for Southern teams. One has a Northern team play in extremely cold weather. Well, I mean, you look at, it's a thing. I mean, you look at the Miami Dolphins, they can't win a game up north. It's a thing, but like, we don't live in Miami. Like, we over here in the mountains. It get cold over here in Knoxville. It's not like we going from 50 degrees to -7. 2003, we go on the road, we play Miami. It was in November. It's like 30, 40 degrees here. It was like 80 degrees in Miami. It was so hot. Like that change of weather can affect the team, but it's not going to be a big enough change here in 2 weeks when we play Ohio State. Basically the same weather. K-Dog says, I don't think Ohio State can stop our running game. Let's go find out. Oregon was able to rush for 155 yards. Jordan James had 5 yards a carry in their game early in the season. Michigan, we know what they did. They didn't pass the ball at all. Mullins, he had 116 yards, and as a team, they rushed 42 times for 172 yards. Like, they muddied the game up. They brought them to the mud. That's what you want to do if you're Tennessee. You don't want Ohio State making this about their receivers in the entire game. That's not a good recipe. They got a lot of talent on the outside. We do too, but that's not what you want. You don't want that, in my opinion. What you do want if you're a homeowner is to take advantage of Hiller's Cash for the Holidays promotion. You get a $500 Visa gift card when you buy select new HVAC systems or a new whole home generator. And when you buy a new tankless water heater, Hiller's going to hook you up with a $250 Visa gift card. Also, you can take advantage of Hiller's $99 drain cleaning special this month. Not a better time than right now to take care of your home before the holiday guests arrive. Make sure your systems are in great place and take advantage of some free cash. So if you know you're going to upgrade to a better HVAC system, you might as well get the $500. If you know you're going to upgrade to a new whole home generator, you might as well get the $500. Just makes sense. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Vol in Birmingham, all I want is our guys to come out with fire, and look like they were prepared for what Ohio State's going to do. Like, I don't have any worry about that, Vol in Birmingham. Think about it, Vol in Birmingham. That's not what you really want. You may want that, but that's not what you really want. What you really want is our team to be ready for the counter punch. Because didn't we do what you said versus Georgia, Vol Birmingham? We came out with fire. We looked prepared for what Georgia was going to do. But the counter punch, we wasn't ready for that. When they adjusted and they punched, we only scored 1 touchdown after that. So for me, it's about in-game adjustments. It's about the counter punch. It's about the halftime adjustments. That's what I want to see us be great at. If you are a team and you don't come out with fire in the playoffs, there's bigger issues. So I'm not necessarily worried about that. Now, you can get stunned. So when you're a fan and you're looking at the game and you see one team come out and they just bull rush the other team, making big plays, momentum in their side, it can look like, oh, man, this other team, they're not ready to play. They're not playing hard. No, they just stunned. They just got ambushed, and they trying to recover. They're not playing hard. They're not playing energy. No, they just stunned. They got to regroup. Sometimes you're able to regroup and get back into the game. Sometimes you're not. Like Clemson was able to stun SMU, and then SMU just got it together, got back into the football game, lost, but they were beating themselves at the beginning. Ohio State approaches Michigan like we do Florida. I don't see them offensively repeating that against us. Yeah, like there's a mental block lately with Ohio State when they play Michigan. Like they can look a certain way all season long up until they play Michigan, and then they clam up, it seems like. It's hard to believe that they'll repeat how they played against Michigan. But if you're Tennessee, what if you repeat what Michigan did to them? How will Ohio State handle that? Like Brian Jean-Marie was here last year. He still has relationships. Let's see if we can do what Michigan did. But I do agree with you, Vaughn Storm. I made that same point to someone. How we used to play against Florida, and maybe still do play sometimes, is how Michigan or how Ohio State plays against Michigan, man. There's a mental block right there. There's the mental block. All right, guys, 865-255-03 is our telephone number Thursday. We'll talk about the game tonight between Tennessee and Miami. Also, we'll continue the coverage and the breakdown of Tennessee and Ohio State, the first round of the playoffs. We'll monitor the transfer portal. Guys, please don't say anything to the players. The calendar is what it is. It's not ideal for anyone involved, coaches or players. And there's a lot of money floating around, and players think they can, get a piece of that pie. And it is what it is. I haven't seen much movement at Ohio State in terms of the transfer portal outside of their backup quarterback hitting the portal, which, hey, if Will Howard gets hurt and Tennessee has beat up on some quarterbacks this year, then that will be a really significant development. But these players got NIL agents in the ear, and these agents don't care anything about them. They're telling them that, hey, we'll go get the money somewhere else. And you might be able to, but not everybody will be able to. Because the money ain't flowing like it was last year or 2 years ago. Stuff is tightening up. Programs are starting to see that they're not getting their money's worth. And they're being smarter with their money. They're being smarter. All right, we'll do it again on Thursday. Swain Event, fueled by Dead End Barbecue, top 100 barbecue restaurant in America. It was cool to go to Dead End the night before the Lady Vols game against Florida State. Great pre-gaming atmosphere. And Lady Vols did their thing versus Florida State, got up by 20, let Florida State get back into it. The second half, I correct myself, Florida State got back into it. They did a good job of fighting back. And then Tennessee, when it mattered most, made the plays to win. Did the same thing versus Iowa. So, love what Kim Caldwell is doing. I suggest everyone, if you like Lady Ball basketball, if you like basketball, and you just haven't been able to watch because you hate the product, I understand, but you need to come on back. You need to come on back. They're playing hard, they're winning, and they're only going to get better as Kim Caldwell continues to bring in more and more talent. They're doing a good job on the recruiting trail as well. Tennessee basketball, number 1 in the country, playing in the Mecca, Madison Square Garden tonight. Make sure you tune in. Thursday, we'll do it again. For Ben McKee, I'm Jason Swain, live here from the Low T Center studio. Peace and love. We're out.